the name of the Creator, Redeemer, and Sanctifier. Please be seated. Is there any children who would like to come forward? Do we have anybody today for the children's sermon? Okay. Yeah, bring a buddy. That's a good idea. Okay. Come and join me. Today, I'd like to talk to you about questions. Do you have questions? Never? I think your mom says different.
Yeah, so many questions.
Do you ask questions? Why is the sky blue? What are some other questions? What questions do you all have?
What's for lunch?
What's for lunch? Okay. Do you have any questions? Why are the lights on? It's in the middle of the day. Yeah, there are so many questions. I can't go through any moment of the day without thinking of a question. That's just part of our life. And so the disciples... All right. So the disciples had some pretty hard questions for Jesus too. And Jesus' answer didn't really have an answer. Instead, when he today's gospel is a lot about doubt and questions. And what I want you to know, this is what I really want you to know, is that your questions are good, even if they are hard questions. Even if they are questions like, I don't know, what would be a hard question? Why is the sun so hot today? Right? Or, yeah, it's very confusing, isn't it? That sometimes our faith can be pretty confusing, but we are a community that holds those questions as part of our faith, as part of what it means to be a church, is to have questions. So I know that you're going to go, what are you all talking about today? Joy and love. I bet we can find some questions about joy and love out there, right? Joy and love sounds like a lot of fun. We'll go out and have some joy and love, and I'll see you next time. All right. Thank you. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was younger, I had a million questions all the time. And it is a fundamental part of our faith. And that is exactly what the gospel talks a lot about today, is that fundamental part of our faith that is about questioning and about doubt. And we're a community that holds on to it. I was reminded this Sunday of Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa, as you know, is a modern-day saint, right? She lived in deep poverty, and she provided space with people who were sick, HIV, tuberculosis, or leprosy, a space to live and a space to die. And she lived in the midst of all of that pain and suffering. And when she died, there was a little bit of a hubbub about making her a saint immediately, but some of her letters were published, and the hubbub became about her letters. She talked a lot about her doubts in her letters. And it kind of caused a, Mother Teresa had doubts type of moment. And she described a spiritual emptiness. But here's the thing that I think makes her a saint. Is that when she had those doubts and that spiritual emptiness, she got up the next morning, and what did she do? She went back to work. She knew that somehow, somewhere, that God is about love, and that she was going to devote her whole life to that love, that sense of what it means to be loved, that unwavering dedication to that understanding, even if it wasn't felt here in the moment. The disciples today, they complain, this is really hard to learn, to understand, as Jesus talks about the bread of life. Now, as many of you might know, we've been kind of journeying through these series, this chapter of John, talking about the bread of life. And it started with the feeding of the 5,000, talking about the abundance of God's love is never ending. But there isn't a finite amount on that. And that truly to understand what it means to live into that life of abundance is to follow Jesus, to follow him, and that he will become for us the way into that abundance. And Jesus goes on to talk about how we, in communion, in having a shared meal together, that bread and that wine, can not only lean into that God's abundance, but we can have that intimate relationship with God. And that it can fill us with that joy and that love that is so beyond our world. You would think, after learning all those keys, what we consider fundamental to our faith, that there would be millions of people following Jesus in that moment. But in truth, behold, in John's gospel, the crowd of 5,000 has diminished to the disciples. And if you caught, even some of the disciples had left. So there was only 12. And then later in John's gospel, a couple of chapters later, Jesus says, even my brothers don't believe. So John's gospel is really holding on to this sense of doubt. It's core to John's gospel. He even says about it in the prologue, Jesus came, but the people did not understand or believe. It's fundamental to our faith. Theologian Kierkegaard talked a lot about doubt. He believed that doubt is just one step into the faith journey. That it's when you have that doubt and you take the step anyway, just as Mother Teresa did, and you hold the sense of your life and your understanding and your doubt, it's a paradox. If you hold that paradox and you leap into that paradox and that doubt, that is a leap of faith. That is the definition of a leap of faith. And that we are called to hold on to that paradox. Paul Tillich even wrote about how, this is another theologian, wrote about how if we don't have a paradox and we don't have that doubt, the opposite of faith is the certainty, is certainty in our world. So if you are certain this is the way it's going to be, there's no faith that it could be any other way. But that's not what the life of God and faith is about. We are to hold on to that paradox. We're to hold on to these pieces where we seem just like total chaos in our lives, and hold on to that chaos and be real about our faith and say, I have doubts. And we're called to lift them up to God. And that is where you can really start to delve into your faith. Peter responds not with an answer, but with a question to all this doubt. In the midst of all of it, he says, Lord, to whom shall we go? It's you where we find our source of life. Out of the midst of doubt comes questions, and out of questions come faith. We are called to embrace that doubt, that chaos. Make it integral into our faith, to live up to those vulnerabilities, because God can handle it. And to lean into what we know, what God is about. Life, love, all the things that we hold dear. And just like Mother Teresa, to to get up and to do the work of the world. I don't know about this, God, but I know that you are love, and somewhere in the midst of this chaos is your love. Let me be a part of it. That is our faith. Let us all be part of that love in the midst of the chaos. Amen.